Hey folks, this is Richard Ricky Garcia, and as part of our effort for the Skywriters Making a Difference campaign, I thought it would be fun to reminisce, record, and share stories from our drum corps days. And I am very fortunate to have one of my best friends from drum corps here. This is the remarkable Dr. Brenda Phillips. She is a retired dentist, and we met in Skywriters in 1982. I marched 81, 82, and Brenda marched
82, 83.
And one of the things that she and I experienced was culture clashes, and specifically around food. And tell us a little bit about your experience with pita bread, Brenda.
Well, sometimes if you didn't make it to the beginning of the food line, you got what was left over. And it always seemed like the pita bread, the pocket bread, was typically left when everybody else had picked over what they wanted. And it was new to me. I had to ask what it was because it seemed very dry and very odd. And then you're trying to put your peanut butter inside there and it just doesn't go very well, or cram the meat, whatever else we had. And it was so dry. I just didn't like it. It was not for its intended purpose of the tzatziki and all that. And so anyway, that was new to me, and I always hated when I was at the end of the line.
I'm really glad you're telling me it's new to you, because it was new to me too. I thought it was, this is a very strange looking tortilla.
Yeah.
It has a pocket in it. And so
well, that could have been good because it could have held your meat and your cheese and stuff a little bit better in there.
That's true, but again, the tortillas I was raised on didn't have pockets. So I feel it feels good to know that I wasn't the only one that was being introduced to these new foods. But something else that I think is interesting is you stayed with a Hispanic family, the Martinez's, and
yeah.
they
He
served
had been the mayor of South Hutchinson, so it was Jim and Santos Martinez, and I absolutely adored them.
And they would serve you what most people would consider burritos, but they had a different name for it.
Yes, because they always said, we don't know why people call them burritos, because burritos are little donkeys, and who would want to eat a little donkey? So it's called a Sancho. And so, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, then I lived in Springfield, Missouri for many years, Southwest Missouri, and there's a Mexican restaurant there that is not very great, but anyway, that was one of their big things on their menu, was a Sancho versus a burrito, and the only difference meant that there was no beans in the Sancho.
That's interesting. I'm sorry. That's interesting because I've never heard that. I've for me, growing up, a burrito was something that it was a little fried pocket that it was usually frozen in the grocery store, and then you just heat it up at home. The staple of Mexican food in Texas is the taco. The staple of Mexican food in California is the burrito, but that's mostly because it's the staple from Baja California. So Sancho, even I haven't heard the term Sancho, but interesting. So and this sounds like this is specific to the Midwest, because I hadn't heard of it. Interesting.
Oh, probably.
And tell us about the time where you ate cactus, nopales.
Nopales. Oh, well, Santos, first of all, we woke up every Monday morning to the wonderful aroma of fresh tortillas being made in her kitchen. She made dozens and dozens and dozens of them from scratch, and she sold them. And so every time I got to go home, I would buy several dozen from her and put them in the freezer. And my mother was always sad when we ran out. But anyway, so the rest of her cooking was fantastic. And she had a lot. If you had meat, it had tons of potatoes. It was very, very potato heavy because that stretched it. And so a lot of her family would come over for dinner. And one night we had my roommate's boyfriend, who was also a baritone, and he was there. And of course the cooking was so good. And I love broccoli. And I said, okay, what is this? Well, it's nopales. It tastes like broccoli. Oh, great. Like I said, it's probably cooked in lard and all the wonderful flavors. It was so good. And I started to get a second helping, and she said, be careful with it. there might be a bad effect. Okay, don't want anything that's a bad effect. Well, her other guest had already piled on 2 or 3 helpings of it and said, nah, it was fine. So we're at rehearsal. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see him walking very quickly to the sideline, gently laying down his horn and taking off like a banshee across the parking lot. And I don't know if he made it to the restrooms or not, but the Nopales had an effect on him.
As soon as you said that, Santos said, "Oh, you want to be careful." I knew exactly where the story was going.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know that I bothered him about it quite a bit after that.
that's both hilarious and embarrassing at the same time. The adventures. Thanks a lot, Brenda.